Statistically, civilian federal employees tend to be very progressive and loyal Democrat voters, and their abundance may have a little bit to do with why Republicans tend to lose in VA8 and VA11. And retreating to your partisan and political echo chambers for news, perhaps the only one that may have caught the story about the recent nomination of chairman for the Merit Systems Protections Board, the government agency that assures the integrity of our civil service system, may have been lost. But what is somewhat surprising is to compare how many headlines made the news when the government shut down and the paychecks for furloughed federal employees was in jeopardy, with what has become the longest lack of a quorum at the MSPB in history. Normally, 2 months at most. The organization, first created in 1978, a reform ushered in with Jimmy Carter, and as a backlash to the events that caused the resignation before impeachment of Richard Nixon at the Watergate. One might find it odd that not even the Federal Workers Union was actually as silent throughout this threat to the appellate rights of federal employees who face adverse personnel actions, just as silent as the Republican nominee in VA8, Jeff Jordan, when the super PAC for the Federal Workers Union made 2 illegal donations to the campaign of Don Beyer, his Democrat opponent, totaling $3,000. Not even a word. But he promised that if elected, he was a veteran military officer and would fight for you. And perhaps we will never know what that might have been like because he lost. And it is intriguing that during the longest lack of a quorum in the history of MSPB, that the Federal Workers Union, with Jerry Conley, with the most civilian federal employees, and Don Beyer with the most government scientists, and second only to Conley in constituents employed as civilians with and military with the federal government, were just as silent about that issue of importance to federal employees who might face adverse personnel actions as they were on May 11, 2018, when the departing acting chairman Mark Robbins issued a withdrawal policy without the required 60-day public comment period that also worked essentially to fraudulently induce federal employees with cases stuck in a backlog numbering in the thousands to request a withdrawal of their cases, languishing in limbo, in exchange for what was called a final order that they told federal employees that they could take to another court. And if you had filed your appeal with a convenient online form and did not believe that you required an attorney because people like Mark Robbins were also Democrats and would fight for you, just like you are probably assured that Robbins is now working for you as the general counsel for the Office of Personnel Management, you may not know that under the federal rules of procedure, which govern all matters in federal courts, you can only have a final order reviewed on appeal if that order is adverse to you. But if you request withdrawal of your appeal from the MSPB, that final order will grant your request, and that is not adverse to you because you asked for it. If you are invited to a poker game and do not know who the sucker is, it is probably you, and you would have voluntarily forfeited your appeal of right, accepted a worthless piece of paper in quid pro quo exchange, and closed the door tight behind you against your return because not the MSPB, but you were the one who dismissed your own case. That is why if you don't actually know the law, it is not a good idea to pretend that you do inside a court. And today there is an update on this continuing saga, as on April 20th, 2021, an important decision was handed down by the Senate Ethics Committee, and this requires a little background. According to an email dated December 15th, 2015, December 11th, 2015, from a senior person at the Defense Intelligence Agency to the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, the directors of which are both 3-star billets at the Pentagon, a federal job offer as a procurement analyst grade GG13 with an annual salary including locality pay of $92,145, the equivalent of a stack of $1 bills stacked one on top of the other to measure half the size of the front of the White House, was considered after the most qualified person had decided to refuse the offer so that the job applicant might take another high-paying federal job, leaving only 2 remaining applicants who had been determined to be the most qualified. In that email, DIA informed the decedent that it was not necessary to continue to consider either applicant because so much time had transpired that the mission for which the position had been announced on USA Jobs had already expired. And DIA at that time informed the decedent that if they still wished to hire new personnel, they could simply do the right thing by canceling the current job requisition and publishing a new federal job announcement on USA Jobs under the new mission criteria. Apparently, this decision may have gone very far up the chain of command, beyond the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, a matter involving DIA, which is the Major Defense Command, or MACOM, of the Defense Embassy and Consulate Services, or DEX, which provides defense intelligence support to U.S. embassies and consulates. It may only be a coincidence that before being elected as the congressman for Virginia's 8th Congressional District, Don Beyer had not only served as U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein, but also had been the 13th highest donor to the Barack Obama campaign prior to receiving the post, bundled donations totaling $500,000. And it may be only a coincidence that he happened to have served under the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who he had supported in the 2016 election. But whoever made the decision, it is a fact that the job requisition was not canceled, nor republished under new criteria, but rather DIA sent an email on February 10, 2016 to the second most qualified applicant with an expiration date for the decision by close of business on February 12, 2016, a Saturday, strangely, as well as the day after the deadline for candidates seeking the nomination of the Republican Party in Don Beyer's 8th Congressional District, a job for which there is no evidence that the person had ever applied, and was offered to the candidate who the press had recognized as the loudest voice in challenge to Don Beyer and the putative frontrunner for the Republican nomination, but who, despite being identified in the press as an unabashed conservative, was later defeated in a landslide at a convention by environmentalist Charles Hernick. And after breaking records for the lowest voting percentage to date in a presidential election year for a Republican nominee, Hernick moved away to Annapolis and took a job as a director for a climate change organization. Records obtained from DOD confirmed that after the job offer recipient refused to reply to the job offer and after the deadline had passed, usually permitting the next most qualified person to receive a job offer, he was contacted yet again with a reoffer of the job for which he had not even applied, in a mission that had been expired, and at which time the congressional candidate sent a strongly worded email to articulate his strenuous objection to what appeared to be a highly improper job offer, if not just illegal. So, the path of this intriguing tale only found its way to the Senate Ethics Committee when the job applicant and soundly defeated congressional candidate, who had even become internationally notorious immediately after his landslide loss, decided to compile evidence to present to the MSPB and had sent a FOIA request to DOD to obtain a copy of whatever file existed for this peculiar job for which he had not applied. When the FOIA request was received by DOD, they immediately sent out a reply letter that they could not immediately respond because of a backlog of just 73 cases, not a large backlog at all for a federal agency, but it was their claim that it could not be determined when a response might later issue. Accordingly, the congressional candidate, or former congressional candidate, in due diligence, contacted his Congressman Don Beyer to request that his office look into the matter and seek to expedite it, if only to clear the congressman's name of any possible wrongdoing. Congressman Beyer, even after the matter was raised at a town hall on July 8, 2018, has yet to respond. And it may only be a coincidence that had Tim Kaine succeeded in ascending to the office of vice president, according to the Washington Post, Don Beyer would have been his heir apparent. And Don ceremoniously took the time during the 2016 campaign to go over to check things out at the Senate side during the no bill, no break controversy, posting a selfie of himself on the way to the upper house. Failing to find any reply from Don Beyer, the defeated congressional candidate then sought to refer the matter to Senator Kaine, who reacted like he had received a hot potato, and immediately on August 16, 2017, sent a letter in reply to the request to state that since the matter had been referred first to Beyer under professional courtesy, he would not be able to provide assistance, despite serving as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, but expressed his great confidence that his colleague Don Beyer would eventually get back to the congressional candidate with a response, whereupon Senator Mark Warner, a fellow resident of Alexandria with Don Beyer, the ranking member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the wealthiest member of the Senate, was contacted for assistance in the matter and was somehow convinced to intervene. And when DOD received word that Senator Warner had requested an expedition of the matter, they promptly sent every document in their files, including a copy of the December 11, 2015 email regarding the offer of the expired mission between DIA and the descent, a document that is classified under the Freedom of Information Act as a deliberative process document, which is usually exempted from release or disclosure unless a person is in current litigation, knows that that specific document exists, and requests it under court order discovery. And with these smoking gun documents, an online appeal was filed with the MSPB, which was somehow lost 2 times before it was finally accepted as acknowledged on February 3rd, 2018. When DOD failed to file a rebuttal to that appeal, they were actually contacted by the General Counsel at MSPB and granted an extension to issue a rebuttal, after which an order to show cause was issued, but to which DOD made no reply, choosing a right to remain silent, and after which an initial decision by an administrative law judge, or ALJ, a government attorney acting as a judicial officer, dismissed the case on the reason, contrary to 28 U.S.C. 1221, that a federal job applicant lacks standing to challenge an adverse personal action. Under that same provision, if it comes to the attention that a whistleblower complaint has been filed on credible evidence, the matter is mandatorily transmitted to the Office of Special Counsel for investigation, which, for whatever reason, did not occur and has not yet occurred. And probably the assumption of DOD at that time was that such would have occurred, and at least one reason for which they may have delayed in their initial response. And on May 11, 2018, the same day upon which the withdrawal policy was issued by acting MSP Chairman Mark Robbins, the sole person remaining on the board prior to his departure to become the General Counsel for OPM, the congressional candidate filed his petition for review before the full board, which was then operating with a lack of a quorum. The matter has been the subject of 2 litigations in federal court to simply attempt to compel MSPB to commence the required whistleblower investigation, as well as a request for a repeal of the unlawful withdrawal policy, all of which actions Congressman Beyer and Congressman Conley, as well as Senators Kaine and Warner, were fully aware. The matter was addressed to House Armed Services Committee Chairman Adam Smith, as well as House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. whose office was not even certain if the matter fell under the oversight of the Intelligence Committee. The matter was presented to House Speaker Pelosi, House Leader Steny Hoyer, and House Majority Whip James Clyburn, and House Ethics Committee as well, who were just as silent as the Republicans in Congressman Byers' district. And so the matter was then sent to the Senate Ethics Committee that has now today decided that there is no evidence of any wrongdoing in matters such as these, involving a job offer of an unexpired mission for which there is no evidence that the applicant ever applied, a thing of value offered to a public official in at least reward for performing some official act, like withdrawing from a congressional race for which a candidate has filed with the Federal Elections Commission, a job for which he would be precluded from continuing in the race under the Hatch Act. Is a matter for voters to decide in elections and not governed by the federal bribery statute. So, the lesson is, if you receive a lucrative job offer for a federal job for which you have not even applied, at least according to the Senate Ethics Committee now, it is definitely not a bribe. Perhaps the government has so many jobs that they are just giving them away, and you have a pandemic crisis. This briefing is unclassified. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for Arlington Public School Board. Let's keep Mike Webb away from our schools. Honest. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.